And this is something that I just learned about this year. I was exposed to it. We had a presentation for our organization from an HST company out of Canada that has been using this. I had never heard of this in my life, and this is 20 years in. So as I was thinking about what would be a topic to be able to bring for a day 2, because I'm a glutton for punishment, I'm like, well, I learned something new. I would like to teach something new. So bear with me today, because we're going to do some mathing today. Good times. All right, and just really, this is again one of those research-based type things. The average sleep tech might not get exposed to this, might not have an opportunity, but maybe in the research space you would. And we kind of touched on this yesterday that, if you have not had a research opportunity, seek that out. And any company that's doing research, be it the wearables space or the medication space, or again, we have something going on that they're just associating depression with apnea. Having clinical sites with techs who are competent and capable and a good patient population to be able to fulfill those trial needs, it's a great opportunity, So what I'm going to do today is really just introduce the concept of what the odds ratio product is, provide practical examples and applications for everyday work, and then explain the significance of that in interpreting sleep-related data for those use in patient outcomes. Excuse me. So really, it's just a helpful tool that allows you to compare the chances or the odds, thus the odds ratio product, of something happening related to sleep disorders between different groups of people. As a clinician, and I specifically use the word clinician in this instead of sleep technologist, because I think there is a difference. As sleep technologists, when you're running studies, that's one thing. You all, especially as we talk about generations, right? We're not going to talk about hair color and age and things like that. But in the generation of sleep technologists that the majority of this room is, and those of you who are really coming into that era, being able to determine those things, you all generally have a good relationship with your providers that they will seek counsel with you, right? Tell me what you saw, tell me what you think. And it's a really great relationship to have with your providers. And it's a tool to understand how different factors might affect people's sleep health. And again, as I was looking into this, I think this is a great project for students as well. So how it works. So you have your odds ratio for factor A, and this is to start, you calculate the odds ratio for one particular factor related to sleep, such as a specific sleep disorder or a treatment method. And this odds ratio helps you understand how that factor influences the likelihood of the sleep-related event happening. For odds ratio factor B, you calculate the odds ratio for another factor, which could be a different sleep-related variable, medication, or lifestyle habit. And this helps you assess the impact of this factor on sleep medicine, on the sleep outcome rather, excuse me. So generally, it's multiplying. Like I said, we're mathing this morning. The ORP is obtained by multiplying the odds ratio factor for A by the odds ratio factor for B. And this gives you a combined measure of how those factors interact to influence the sleep-related event. Now, if it's greater than 1, and it says significantly greater, and you'll see in one of the examples, it suggests that both factors, when considered together, have a more substantial impact on the outcome. Less than 1, it's a weaker combined influence. So for this, let's take one that really we all know, sleep apnea and obesity. And suppose you are conducting a study on the relationship between obesity and sleep apnea, specifically among males and females. Among a group of 100 males, we take 60 that are obese and 40 that are not obese. And of the obese males, 30 have sleep apnea, 30 do not. And of the non-obese males, 5 have sleep apnea, 35 do not. And then with the females, again, we have 30 that are obese, 70 not, 15 have sleep apnea, 15 do not, and of the non-obese, 10 have and 60 do not. So these are the numbers that we're going to be working with. So here you're going to have 3 odds ratios. One is the obesity as a risk factor for sleep apnea among males. 2 is going to be obesity as a risk factor for sleep apnea among females. And then gender as a risk factor for sleep apnea among non-obese individuals. So you get to really pick and choose. Whatever it is you want to study, you pick it. So whatever you can imagine, you can do this with. And so to assess that, you're going to multiply the odds ratio 1 and odds ratio 2 to get the product for obesity and gender. And again, it restates if it's significantly greater than 1, it suggests that the combination of obesity and gender has a strong influence on sleep apnea risk. And again, I picked this one because we really already know this. This is something that we've seen in the studies. So, a lot of numbers up here, and I'm not going to go through them all. But the math is mathing. So again, as you're doing your multiplication with the numbers that we had, we have that 0.14, and then we do the next one, we have that 0.25. So calculating the odds ratios based on the numbers in the previous screen. So once we did that, we have this. So for the males, it was 0.14, and for the females, it was 0.25. And again, the odds, what are the chances? So when you're thinking of this, odds are chances, just like when you're gambling. And to assess the combined effect, you're going to multiply the 1 and the 2 and get the odds ratio. And so for this, for the obesity and gender, it calculated to that 0.035. So that one was not significantly greater than 1, so it's suggesting that in this case the product is quite low, indicating that the combined effect is not very strong. And again, it gives a little caveat there. The interpretation might vary in a real medical study, and more data would be needed for conclusive assessment. Again, this was just a general number. So for the next one, and again, this is something we're familiar with, but just to be able to kind of understand it and go through it. So for this, if we wanted to look at sleep medication and age in insomnia treatment and look at real values. And so here we want to conduct a study to evaluate the effectiveness of a sleep medication for treating insomnia in 2 age groups, younger adults and older adults. And so they identify the younger adults as 18 to 40. And the older adults as the 60 plus. And I found it interesting that they kind of left the fabulous 50s out somewhere, right? So, and you know, it doesn't matter. I still fall into one of the categories. Okay, so for this one, of the 100 younger adults, 60 did receive the sleep medication and 40 do not. Okay, so again, this is just a case study. Of those who received the medication, 40 experienced successful treatment and 20 did not. And among those who did not receive the medication, only 5 experienced successful treatment while the 35 did not. So again, these are all the numbers that we're working with. And if you're like me, you really have to lay numbers out a certain way. I'm not a mathematician. I have to work really hard at word problems. And then of the older adults, that 60 plus group, 30 received the medication, 70 do not. Those who received 20 experienced successful treatment and 10 did not. And then for those who did not receive the medication, 10 experienced successful treatment while 60 did not. And again, you're going to have a spreadsheet with all of this and be able to kind of lay it out a little bit better. So when we're calculating that, the effectiveness of the medication in younger adults was what that odds ratio 1 is. And so that is the odds of successful treatment with medication in younger adults, and divided by the odds of successful treatment without medication. So when we took those numbers from the previous screen, the 40 divided by 20, the 5 divided by 35, and then multiply those two numbers together is that 14.29. When we look at the effectiveness of medication in older adults, and again, the odds of successful treatment with medication divided by the odds without, again, doing the math came out to the 12. And we had our results were the 14.29 for the younger adults and the 12 for the older adults. And so when we multiply that, we get that 171.48. And so my favorite phrase in this whole thing is that significantly greater than 1. I would say that 171.48 is significantly greater than 1. And so it suggests that the medication is more effective when considering both age groups together. And in this case, you know, we see that it is treating insomnia is significantly higher when both younger and older adults are taken into account. So again, you really get to pick whatever population you want, whatever it is you're interested in kind of figuring out. And this is not necessarily something we do in our everyday lives, but in the research space, And when I was researching this one, or when we were given the presentation, this particular organization was using this for sleep staging, so that was really interesting too. It was a little over my head, I'm not going to lie. I just wanted to understand what ORP was. All right, and so the significance of the odds ratio product in interpreting sleep-related data is that it's a valuable statistical tool in various research and clinical contexts. Its significance lies in the ability to provide insights into how multiple factors interact and influence the likelihood of sleep-related events or outcomes. When we look at identifying combined effects, you can look at sleep-related issues that are influenced by multiple factors: age, gender, medical conditions, lifestyle, and more. And I think it would be really interesting to see, especially as we are in an era of gender identity being more acknowledged, recognized, and really being studied. I think it would be interesting to see a study in that space. With medical conditions, we are a country that has plenty of medical conditions, right? There's something at every turn. And so being able to see anything that influences our sleep, right? Anything that influences our sleep. And I think any one of us probably has our own anecdote to share about that. It would be nice if we could get a CEU just sharing our personal stories, don't you think? I would love it, because I've enjoyed listening to you, all the questions that you've asked and the things that you've shared. And by calculating that, you can determine how these factors interact, and again, suggesting a strong combined effect. So this is really kind of where a research project might start, if you're interested in doing one, and what could that look like, and then understanding the complex interplay of factors affecting sleep. So again, as a baseline, if you have a research company, medication, even the wearables, any space for research, the first thing is, what do we want to research and what do we want to understand about what we're researching? Quantifying the impact. So the ORP also provides a single numerical value that quantifies the joint impact of multiple factors. So again, the first study with the sleep and the obesity, I was kind of surprised at that number. I really expected it to be much higher. And then understanding with the second one how significantly greater than 1 it is. And the fact that 1 is that factor is also kind of interesting. Researchers and clinicians. And again, I call you all clinicians, right? It's not just for sleep technologists. I believe at this point you're really clinicians. You can use this information to prioritize interventions or treatments based on the factors that have the most significant combined influence on sleep-related outcomes. And so you may be thinking, how in the world can I do that? When you're looking at CPAP, when you are, looking at how can we make sure patients are successful on that, there's an opportunity to use that. And this helps in tailoring the interventions. If you're a sleep specialist, it can guide your treatment recommendations. If you find that the ORP for a particular combination of factors is high, it indicates that addressing those factors may have a more substantial impact on improving a patient's sleep. It would be fun to see one of the providers ask y'all to do that, I think. Fun for me, not for you probably. All right, research in public health. So again, because we're looking at the chances, what are the odds of something happening? Research and public health. So we stay in a state of public health research right now. We've just been through a pandemic, and given that that's only a couple of years ago, we are still studying the effects of what COVID has had on us head to toe. And no doubt any of you that may have experienced COVID and still having lasting effects from that, and if sleep is an effect of that, it would be really interesting to participate in a study to that effect as well. It helps in the development of public health strategies, especially when identifying risk factors for sleep disorders. So again, you see there's a way to tie this in together and really understand how research and public health, and sleep really being recognized as its own health issue. When interpreting sleep-related data, healthcare professionals can rely on the ORP to make informed decisions about treatment plans and allocate resources more efficiently. So again, in the public health space, resources is a huge issue, right? Do we have what we need to make sure that the general public is getting what they need, let alone our underserved populations, right? So considering that and what we do. So with the CPAP titration, as I spoke about earlier, in patients with the OSA, excuse me, this can assist in PAP titration during sleep study by considering various factors like body position and severity of the condition. You can fine-tune the CPAP settings to ensure effective treatment. And so, maybe the next time you have that patient and you're just, gosh, I really want to learn more about that ORP and do some math while I'm trying to titrate this patient tonight. Excuse me. In risk assessment, and again in epidemiological studies, the odds ratio product is used for risk assessment of patients developing or experiencing specific sleep disorders. And again, I just appreciate that the research for the sleep disorders is out there and it is being looked at, researched, and applications are being made toward that. For instance, when evaluating patients for OSA, the ORP can help identify individuals at higher risk based on multiple factors such as age, weight, and comorbidities, and this aids in prioritizing diagnostic testing and treatment planning. When we compare interventions, studying the effectiveness of those interventions or treatments for sleep-related issues, this can be used to compare combined impact of multiple treatment options. And again, identifying which interventions are more effective when you consider those factors simultaneously. For example, if a patient with insomnia has several contributing factors, and insomnia is an interesting one because everybody has their own perception, right? And so that's where that cognitive behavioral therapy really comes in. Age, anxiety, caffeine intake. The ORP can guide the selection of interventions that target the most influential factors such as stress reduction techniques or medication management. And again, insomnia, it's so subjective, right? And this was a short talk, by the way, and he didn't put my timer up, so I'm good. The odds ratio product is a powerful tool for analyzing sleep-related data because it goes beyond the single factor analysis. Again, you're going to look at factor 1, factor 2. You can add in additional factors or break them down. There's a lot of ways you can play with that. And then providing a more comprehensive view of the factors influencing those sleep-related outcomes, which allows researchers and clinicians such as yourself to make more informed decisions, prioritize your interventions, and better understand the complex nature of sleep disorders and their treatment. Any questions, comments, or contributions? Oh, thank y'all. You did good. You did good. Thank you so much. I know that was short, and I'm sorry, Candy.